Our weekly theme is rooted and rising, living from what grounds you. And the core prayer for the week of January 26th through January 30th is knowing who you are, honoring your season, growing without rushing, rising without losing yourself. This is about confidence without all the noise. Today is Monday, January 26th, and we're in season 2, and this is episode 30. Our title today is Growing Without Rushing, What Being Rooted Really Means. So it's growing without rushing, what being rooted really means. So our anchor question for today's episode, I want you to sit with it and answer it after you've listened to the episode. What does it look like to grow from a grounded place, not pressure? What does it look like to grow from a grounded place, not pressure? Okay. So, welcome to Cup of Cocoa and Chat, the podcast. Whenever you're tuning in, whether it's morning, afternoon, or late at night, I'm really glad that you are here. Whether you're listening in your car, at the gym, or on public transportation, digging your car out of the snowstorm, all the snow that the snowstorm dropped on us over the weekend, or on your lunch break, or even in a quiet moment at home, I want to invite you to take a breath with me. Not to stop what you're doing, but to settle into the moment. Because today's conversation isn't about pushing harder, it's about being grounded. We're moving in a time where everything feels urgent. Life wants us to move faster. The internet wants us to post more, respond quicker, stay visible, and to keep up. And if you're not careful, we start believing that growth only counts if it's immediate, if it's noticeable, or if it's loud. Somewhere along the way, many of us were taught that if it's taking time, we must be behind. If it's quiet, it must not be working. And if we're not constantly moving, we must be stuck. But that's not the truth. Today, I want us to gently pause and challenge that idea because growth isn't subtle. Growth doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it is subtle, right? Sometimes it is slow. Sometimes it's happening quickly or quietly, internally, long before it ever shows up on the outside. And that kind of growth still counts. Again, this episode is called Growing Without Rushing, What Being Rooted Really Means, because I've been reflecting on this lately. I've been reflecting on this a lot. Rooted things grow differently, and that's okay. That's okay. When something is rooted, it isn't in a hurry. It's not chasing timelines or comparing paths. It's focused on depth, stability, and strength. Being rooted doesn't mean you're standing still. It means you're growing with intentional. And everything that we do should be intentional. So as you continue whatever you're doing right now, driving, walking, working, or resting, I invite you to listen with an open heart because this conversation is about honoring your pace, trusting your process, and remembering that your growth doesn't need urgency to be valid. So let's get into what what it means to be. When we talk about being rooted, oh my goodness, what happened, guys? Okay, we're still going. I'm sorry. I thought everything had disappeared. Okay. So when we talk about being rooted, we're really talking about knowing, we're really talking about I'm sorry, I'm getting all kinds of messages on Spotify, and it scared me for a moment. I thought we had stopped recording. When we talk about being rooted, we're really talking about knowing y- who we are and what matters to us, right? Even when everything around us is shifting. Being rooted isn't about having everything figured out. It's about having a sense of self that doesn't disappear every time the season changes. Because let's be honest, life changes. It's changing every day. It changes every hour. Actually, it changes every minute. People change, our roles change, platforms change. And if you're not rooted, every change can feel like you're starting over. But when you're rooted, every change is different. It means you're moving differently. Being rooted means you're clear on your values, you know what you stand for, and just as importantly, what you no longer chase. You may still grow, stretch, and evolve, but you don't abandon yourself in the process. And I want to pause here because there's a big difference between being busy and being grounded. Being busy and being grounded. Busy looks productive on the outside. Busy fills the calendars. Busy feeds the algorithms. Busy keeps you moving. Busy can look impressive, but grounded feels different. Grounded means your actions are connected to your intentions. It means you're not just responding, you're choosing. You're not just doing, you're deciding why. Busy asks a question. What else can I add? But grounded asks what actually matters right now. So busy can ask, what else can I add to make me look like I'm busy to everyone? But when you're grounded, that question changes. It's what actually matters right now. So grounded doesn't have you all over the place, but busy can have you all over the place. Okay? And when you're rooted, you start recognizing when busyness is a distraction instead of progress. Because you can be busy all day long and never have any progress going on. You haven't finished one single thing. Okay? Another part of being rooted is staying connected to your values, even when the season changes, because seasons will change. What worked before may not work now. What once felt aligned may start to feel heavy. Being rooted doesn't mean resisting change. It means letting change happen without losing your center. You can shift your schedule. You can change your approach. You can even change your direction without changing who you are at the core. That's what grounding gives you, stability without stagnation. So, grounded gives you stability without stagnation. Okay. And here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. A lot of real growth happens quietly. A lot of real growth happens quietly. Not everything grows in public. Not everything blooms on a timeline others can see. Some of the most important growth happens behind the scenes, like learning to say no without feeling guilty, choosing to rest without having to explain why, letting go of old definitions of success, and defining success accurately as it pertains to your growth. Rebuilding confidence slowly but gently. This kind of growth doesn't always get applause, but it builds strength, it builds clarity, and it builds peace. And when you're rooted, you trust that quiet growth is still growth. You don't rush it, you don't force it, you don't compare it. Your growth may not look like my growth, and my growth doesn't look like the next person's growth. You let it unfold into its own time. So if you're in a season where things feel slower than you expected or quieter than you imagine or less visible than before, that doesn't mean nothing is happening. It may mean you're becoming more rooted, and rooted things don't rush. They grow with purpose. And that's what we want to do. We want to grow with purpose. We want to be intentional. You want to be intentional with your words. You want to be intentional with your steps. And that's what grounded is all about. All right. So growing without rushing. Growing without rushing. One of the biggest challenges in this season of life, especially in a world that rewards speed, is learning how not to rush what's unfolding. Rushing can feel productive. It can feel like momentum, right? But often rushing quietly pulls us away from our purpose and our peace because you feel like you got to be performative, like you got to be at someone else's beck and call, that you have to be at someone else's timeline. Just because I moved to a higher place doesn't mean that that's the place where you need to be. Okay? When we rush, we often stop listening. We start reacting instead of responding. We move from alignment into anxiety. And I know a lot about that because I have had so much anxiety just around mapping out my content and trying to figure out what's best for me and my peace and what's best for my listeners. And the tricky part is Russian doesn't always look chaotic. Sometimes it looks organized, sometimes it looks successful, sometimes it even looks like growth. But beneath it, so we're talking about it looking organized, successful, and it looks like growth on the surface. But underneath it, there's pressure, there's tension, there's the constant feeling of needing to keep up. And that pressure slowly disconnects us from why we started in the first place. And I remember getting to that point, like questioning, why did I start Cup of Cocoa in chat? Who is it for? Who's watching it? Who's watching? Who's listening? And I had to step back. So growing without rushing means learning to trust your timing because there's a timing on everything. And it may not be the timing we want, but it's the timing he wants. And trusting your timing gets hard when you're surrounded by other people's highlight reels, when you're watching what other people are doing, when you feel like they're moving at a pace where you should be moving. Here's the truth in that you don't know what someone else sacrificed to move that fast. You don't know what they skipped, and you definitely don't know what they're carrying. Your timing is shaped by your life, your capacity, your responsibilities, your healing, and your purpose. And when you rush yourself to match someone else's timeline, you risk building something you can't sustain. And that's why growing without rushing also means choosing sustainability progress over performative progress. That's why growing without rushing means choosing the sustainable progress over performative progress. And a few months ago, I felt like I was doing performative progress. I was trying to get up at 6. I started out getting up at 6, doing Cup of Cocoa and Chat live, right? I started on one platform, and then I wanted to add another platform, and then I wanted to add another platform. And then when that became too much, I said, oh, I can't do it for 5 days, right? So I went to doing it Monday. I did it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Getting up at 6, going live, never knowing who was going to be up at 6, never knowing who was going to be on my platform. But I knew I seen other people doing it and they were successful. But their success, I had to learn that their success is their success and my success is my success. So I had to step back, But it took anxiety creeping up, it took depression creeping up, it took all of those things for me to decide on a new roadmap for 2026, which is my timeline. So I went from performative progress to sustainable progress. And then I started seeing what that could do for me. Performative progress looks good on the outside. It's constant updates, it's constant output, it's constant motion. It's growth that needs to be seen to feel real. But sustainable progress is quieter. It's paced. It's built with rest, reflection, and intention woven in. So, sustainable growth risk. Can I maintain this? Does this support my well being? And does this align with my values? And those are three questions that I had to ask myself. I had to get to a place where I could maintain what I was doing. I had to get to a place where it was supporting my rest and my well being. And I had to get to a place where it was aligning with my values and m- my steps and how my progression is supposed to go. Okay? Because growth that costs you your peace is too expensive. It will have you on your back. It will have you on your back, right? And here's something I've learned: slow growth often lasts longer. When you take your time, you build strong foundations, you learn as you go, you ingest, you, I'm sorry, you adjust instead of burning out. You grow in a way that can support the next season, not just to survive the current one. Slow growth gives you room to become who you need to be to carry what's coming next. And that's why growing without rushing isn't about doing less, it's about doing what's right for you. And it took me almost a year to figure it out. It's about trusting that what's meant for you will meet you right. It will meet you at the right place. At the right place, the right pace, the right time. It's about believing that consistency matters more than speed. Consistency matters more than speed. And it's about knowing that you don't have to hurry to be worthy of progress. So if you're feeling tempted to rush right now, I want you to hear this. You're not behind, you're not late, and you're not failing. You're growing, just not in a way that needs to be harried. And that kind of growth has staying power. And that's the kind of power you want. You want it to last. You want it to be around. You don't want it to rise and then fall. You want it to stay around. You want sustainability. Now, let's go into defining success on your own terms. We talked a little bit about this last week. At some point in our lives, many of us realize that the definition of success we've been chasing wasn't actually ours. It wasn't ours. It didn't belong to you. That's why you never were able to obtain it. Okay? It was borrowed, it was picked up from society, and it was picked up from family expectations, from social media, from timelines that never ask if they fit your own lives. And one of the most freeing things you can do is to release borrowed definitions of success. Because success that isn't aligned with your values will always feel heavy. So, will always feel heavy, no matter how good it looks on the outside. Defining success on your own terms starts with asking better questions, not the old dreadful, how does this look? Instead, how does this feel? That's the question that you should be asking. Not how does this look, but how does this feel? Does it bring you peace? Does it bring you clarity? Does it support your well being? And can you be consistent without feeling drained or resentful? Because I'm going to tell you, getting up at 6 o'clock in the mornings to go live, and sometimes there were people on, sometimes they weren't. Some people came in when they were getting ready for work. Some people came in when they were driving to work. Um, some people just came in to say hi. Um, and it drained me because I was looking for something that someone else had already obtained, but not looking for something that aligned with my life and what was better for me. They are markers. Well, these are the markers that matter, right? They are markers that matter, and these are the ones that matter. Peace is a form of success. Peace is a form of success. So when you have peace within anything you're doing, you already is you're already out the gate. You already are out the gate. Clarity is a form of success. When you have clarification of what you're doing, your direction, what's next, and your steps, that is a form of success. Consistency, especially when it's gentle and sustainable, is a form of success. Now, the one thing I did have is consistency because I got up every morning at 5 o'clock, got myself camera ready, and came on the camera at 6 o'clock. I did it every morning. I started in January and I fell off a little bit, came back, and I came on every morning for 5 days, fell off, came back for 3 days. And then finally, I said, there has got to be a roadmap that aligns with my life and my well being. And when you start measuring growth by these things, everything shifts, right? When you look at those markers, which is peace is a form of success, clarity is a form of success, and consistency. When you start measuring growth by those things, everything shifts, right? I had one of the three. I had consistency, but I didn't have the peace and I didn't have the clarity. So once everything shifts, you stop chasing applause. You stop proving yourself and you stop overextending just to be seen. Because I'm going to be very transparent with you right now. Very transparent. I didn't get my first check or income or monies or whatever you want to say from what I'm doing until I had the peace, had the clarity, because I had consistency, but I didn't have all the other things because I was trying to measure myself and what I was doing by someone else's success. And when I stopped all of that and got the peace and got the clarity along with the consistency, I got my first check. You know, it only took a year. And I was thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? It's taking longer. But anything worth the time and effort is what gives you the greater outcome. And I had to learn that at my big old age. Okay. So I stopped chasing applause. I stopped proving myself and I stopped overextending myself. Another part of the finding success on your own terms is giving yourself permission to evolve without explanation. And I had to get there because you're allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to outgrow old goals that you set. You're allowed to move differently in this season than you did in the last one. You don't owe anyone a detailed explanation for your growth. Evolution doesn't mean you failed before. It means you've learned. As simple as that. It means you learned. Okay? And sometimes the bravest thing you can say is this no longer fits me, and that's okay. Not to say that I will never go live again, because I still will go live. As a matter of fact, someone reached out to me last week on Instagram and asked the question, will a cup of cocoa and chat be live anywhere? And I said, unfortunately not, but I do have videos and I do have my podcast and I do posts. Um, but I'm just not live with the segment. However, I'm not going to say that I will never go live again. I will go live, but it may be just to play games or just to talk. It definitely won't be at 6 o'clock in the morning anymore, but I will go live. But in my own timing, right? I tried to do something that I had seen and that worked for someone else, but it didn't work for me. And it's okay. It no longer fits me and it's okay. Success isn't about being the loudest in the room. It's about being aligned with who you are becoming. Because applause fades, no shade, but applause fades, trends change, and validation shifts, but alignment sustains you. So as long as you are aligned with what works in your life and what works for you, you're going to be great. So when success is aligned, you don't have to perform. You don't have to rush. You don't have to constantly prove your worth. You can show up steadily, you can grow intentionally, and you can build a life that feels good to live in, not just good to display. And that's the kind of success that lasts. So if you're redefining success right now, quietly, privately, intentionally, you're not behind. You are aligned, and that's more than enough. That's more than enough. So let's get to our segment. Let's get to the portion of the segment called Sip on This. Sip on this. And normally I give an affirmation or a scripture or both. So, as we begin to close out today's conversation, I want to invite you to slow things down with me just for a moment. No matter where you're listening from right now, again, whether you're driving, walking, winding down, or taking a quiet pause, I want you to hear this next part not as something to rush through, but something to sit with. Okay? This is our sip on this moment. And I'm going to say this affirmation slowly, and I invite you to let it land wherever you need it most today. I don't need to rush what's meant to rise. I am growing in my own time. I am rooted, steady, and becoming. I don't need to rush what's meant to rise. I am growing in my own time. I am rooted, steady, and becoming. Just let that breathe for a second. I don't need to rush what's meant to rise. I'm growing in my own time. I'm rooted, steady, and becoming. Because so often we rush without even realizing it. We rush our healing, we rush our progress, we rush ourselves to be ready, to be visible, to be further along than we actually are. Okay? So before you move on to the next thing today, I want to invite you to reflect gently, honestly, on the question that I gave at the beginning of this episode. And I worded it different, but it all means the same. Where might you be rushing right now? And what would it look like to soften your pace? Not to stop, not to give up, but to move with intention instead of pressure. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is allow your growth to unfold without a deadline attached to it. So as we move through the rest of this week here on Cup of Cocoa and Chat, everything we share will continue to build on this idea of rooted, intentional living. Um, I'll do a spoken sip Tuesday that invites reflection and gratitude. Actually, I'm going to post two tomorrow. The one from last Tuesday that I did not post, and the one for tomorrow, which is January 27th, my birthday. Um, and then Wednesday is my review day, and I have a product. I'm only going to do one review on Wednesday. I do my reviews, so they're mostly TikTok or Amazon. And this one is going to be a TikTok review, but I do share clips of the review on all of my platforms. But if you want to purchase um, whatever product I review, you do have to go to TikTok. Unfortunately, if you don't have a TikTok, yeah, a lot of the things are um, also on Amazon. So that's just a little tip. Um, And that's what I do on Wednesdays. And then on Thursdays is what I call quiet cocoa. And that will just be a post. It can be a reflection, it could be an affirmation, it could be a scripture, anything, but it'll be something that I will post on all my platforms. Okay? And it's really designed to help you stay grounded and centered for the week. And then we'll wrap the week up with a soft recap and a reflection and bring it all together. I'm working on YouTube has a live premiere, and I'm working on that, and it's not actually live. I will post a video, and it's probably from my Spoken Sip Tuesday, and then we do a live chat. We do a live chat, and I'll be in the chat, just chatting, but it won't be on camera. So wherever this episode met you today, I hope it reminded you of this truth. Okay? You don't have to rush to be worthy of growth. You don't have to perform to be progressing. You don't have to explain your pace to anyone. I want to thank you for spending this time with me. I want to thank you for listening with an open heart. And I want to thank you for choosing conversations that nourish your peace. Until next time, take care. Be gentle with your heart. And as always, peace, blessings. I love you, and I mean it.